Hello, company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft. Covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and of course, always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Now, usually, for every episode of the Show People podcast, we would bring you an extraordinary artist to discuss their life and career. And today, there is no exception to that. But sadly, these circumstances are different. Today, we are honouring the memory of Daniel Bolton, who is sadly no longer with us in our fantastic industry. Today, this episode is for Danny. I just want to give you a little bit of context. I never knew Danny, sadly. I was having a bit of a tough week. Me and my wonderful fiancée decided to separate. I've gone down with this terrible chest infection and flu, so do forgive me for sounding a little bit more bassy than normal. And I was feeling pretty rotten. And then, across Twitter and Facebook, I saw this outpouring of love for this remarkable young man, Daniel Bolton. And it's difficult when we lose anybody in our business, but to see someone so young taken from us so early very much put things into perspective. And as I read about Daniel or Danny, the more impressed I was by his incredible personality, the stories that people were telling. And I suppose where we live in a day where social media is the be-all and end-all, and, you know, for 2-3 days, everyone writes about their thoughts and prayers for an individual. And then a few days later, you start seeing the same old videos of Theresa May dancing and what Donald Trump has said. And these people can feel forgotten. Not truly forgotten, because, of course, loved ones will never, never, ever forget somebody as extraordinary as Daniel. But I thought, what with the long life of the Show People podcast, how wonderful it would be, maybe for those who are grieving, to remember some happy memories of Daniel, but also in years to come for people to still come across this episode and remember him. I'd like to be clear that I have been working with Daniel's family and his friends, so thank you to you incredible, incredible people going through this abhorrent time at the moment. Thank you for finding the time to send me just a few anecdotes and all the information about Daniel, and I look forward to sharing it with our wider industry and, of course, with his family, friends, and even those who never knew him. Let's remember Daniel, and let's tell his story. Well, let's start at the very beginning. Danny was born on the 27th of August, 1990, to Leslie and David Bolton. He was their first child, weighing over 10 pounds, and came into the world very dramatically. The start of things to come. On the 11th of May 1993, his first sibling Alex was born, and on the 9th of April 1997, his second and final sibling Rebecca was born. Leslie and David say the Bolton family was complete. Daniel's journey with musical theatre started in 1993, at the age of 8, when he came home from school waving a letter at his mum saying, "I want to do this, mummy." It was a letter from the secretary of their local Amdram Society, Horwich Operatic and Dramatic Society. Jan O'Brien was the secretary, who then became a very close family friend who has avidly followed his training and his career. They were putting on a performance of Oliver in the year 2000. He was successful at being in Fagin's gang and thoroughly enjoyed it, insisting at the end of the show that he wanted to do more. As a family, they made lots of friendships from his experiences on stage, and indeed those friendships continue to this day. Another hobby of Daniel's as a child was football. His father, David, had a youth football team that grew to having 3 teams and 40-plus young lads playing football in local leagues every single week. Danny's family always laughed that after giving up one of his biggest passions to be an actor, his West End debut was, of course, in a show about football in Howard Goodall's Bend It Like Beckham. Danny then briefly joined a children's drama group in West Horton to perform with one of his Oliver pals, Bruce Pilkington, in a production of Dazzle, and he was the narrator, where he then found out about another children's society putting on another production of Oliver at St Philip's Junior Workshop in Bolton. Daniel and Bruce played alongside each other in this production as Oliver and Dodger, and both of them stayed with this children's workshop for many, many years. On the passing of Danny Whitehead wrote of his friend, 18 years ago, 2 young boys from Bolton were in rehearsals for a production of Oliver. Both had dreams of becoming professional actors in West End musicals. Well, we did it, Danny. You did it, making friends with everyone you met. Whenever I started a new show and I said where I'm from, there were always people that said, "Oh, you must know Danny Bolton from Bolton." I remember the last time we bumped into each other. We were both understudying in different shows, and we spoke about how much we enjoyed it. Well, tonight, I go on for my first ever show understudying Raoul in The Phantom of the Opera. This one's for you, Danny. That young lad in his Bolton Wanderers football shirt who stood next to me as we began our dreams together. Gone far too soon. Sleep well, mate. Lots of love. Other youth productions include Oliver, where he played Oliver for St. Philip's, and Frederick in The Sound of Music, and the King in The King and I, and for Bolton Catholic's youth, he played Coco in The Mikado, as well as being part of St. Philip's adult productions, concerts, and numerous plays for one-act play festivals. At the same time as being in junior workshops, Daniel also continued to get involved in adult societies in Bolton, performing at the Albert Halls in Bolton in shows such as Oliver, The King and I, and Jekyll and Hyde. I had a lovely message coming from Sarah Pilkington, and she says, "We first met Daniel when my children attended Acorns Nursery in Lowestoft circa 1993. They moved on to school, and we didn't meet again until Daniel and my son Bruce were in the children's chorus for Horwich RMI AODS April 2000 production of Oliver. The following year, they both had parts in the Bethel Crowd Junior Workshop in West Orton and a production of Dazzle. Dazzle was a spoof on Star Trek. Daniel played Gary Gemini, a DJ. Now, we're not quite sure how a DJ got to be in Star Trek, but they were asked to audition for St. Philip's Junior Workshop's production of Oliver, in which they played Oliver and Dodger respectively. Other than an appearance carrying the canopy in St. Philip's adult production of Fiddler on the Roof, which gained Daniel and Bruce the nickname the Canopy Boys, I don't think Daniel was ever in the chorus of an amateur production again. Whilst we were involved with St. Phil's Juniors, Daniel starred as Frederick in The Sound of Music, took the lead in Great Grandmother's Day, and I had the pleasure of producing him in a review called Thank You for the Music. His confidence and charisma as a performer stood out from the very first. As Gary Gemini, dressed a bit like a Vegas Elvis, he burst onto the stage with aplomb far beyond his years. I had the pleasure of directing him on a couple of occasions, and he took his craft very, very seriously, learning his lines and moves very quickly. He knew he wanted to appear on stage, and worked towards that from the very beginning, gaining as much experience as he could and going to dance classes despite what his schoolmates said. All that aside, he was a normal young boy with a cheeky, mischievous grin. As a family, we were lucky enough to count the Boltons as friends, sharing New Year's parties with them, even when they would beat the hell out of the pinata. They also came along to weekends in Blackpool, when 60 or so of us would take over a hotel, the Welbeck. And as the eldest children, Daniel and Bruce were self-styled leaders of a pack of near feral children who would spend the evenings running around the hotel, making good use of the 2 staircases, playing tug and hide and seek. Saturday morning would find us at the ice skating ring. Now let me tell you, getting a taxi for 20 plus children isn't easy, nor us making sure all the children were accounted for at the end. There, they would form a chain skating around the ice to see which of the adults they could knock down. Usually quite a few, but it was an excellent hangover cure. The Pilkingtons and the Boltons would then adjourn to the bowling alley for an inter-family tournament. Happy days. That story comes from Sarah, Bruce and Beth Pilkington. At the age of 13, and particularly at the point of making GCSE choices at school, Daniel started to discuss what he wanted to do in the future and announced he wanted to perform on a West End stage. Now, as a non-musical theatre family prior to 1999, this seemed a bit pie in the sky, especially to his mum and dad. But he insisted he was going to follow his dreams. His younger sister, at the time, aged 6, attended a dance school in Bolton. He came to collect her one day, and without his mum knowing he was going to ask, he asked her dance teacher if he could start dance lessons. The reply was not very encouraging for him, and he was obviously upset by the response. So on the way home, we passed another dance school and decided to go in and ask there. Daniel was welcomed with open arms. There was even a ballet class happening at the time with another teenage boy who had just started, so he was encouraged to sit and watch. At the end of the lesson, the teacher asked if he was still interested, and he agreed. She told him to turn up in shorts and a t-shirt same time next week, not to buy any special gear. This dance school, Francis Bleasdale School of Dance, became and still is a very important of his and our family's life. He attended from 2003, eventually securing a funded place at Lane Theatre Arts in 2013. This dance school took him from being a completely untrained dancer at the age of 13 to a dancer with the qualifications and skills to try and achieve his dreams. And he did. He left Rivington and Blackrod High School at 16 to carry out a BTEC in musical theatre at Pendleton Sixth Form in Salford, performing in shows like Les Miserables to open the new theatre at the Pendleton, Grease, Slice of Saturday Night, Twelfth Night, and even The Pirates of Penzance. I have a lovely story here from Sue. I had the enormous pleasure of chaperoning Danny and Rebecca numerous times during stage experience at the Palace Theatre in Manchester. It was a summer project for up-and-coming performers. He shared the stage many a time with my daughter Danielle as his dance partner. As much the cheeky chappy that he was, he had the utmost respect for us chaperones and his fellow performers on stage. He was truly a gentleman, dedicated, committed, and extremely talented, and I knew back then he would make it big. We used to laugh together as I told him to shush in the wings, as he would crack jokes just before he was due to go on. He did numerous amateur productions with my daughter Danielle, both at Pendleton College and other venues, and one sticks in my mind was when they did a scene from Legally Blonde in A Sound of the Musicals. To a wonderful young man taken far too soon, keep smiling, keep dancing, keep shining. Love, Chaperone Sue. After 2 years, he started the auditions for drama schools in London, but was unsuccessful at gaining funded places. He never gave up hope, saying, "I'll try again next year." So he stayed for a third year at Pendleton to do a 1-year additional course. However, he heard about auditions for Disneyland Paris and was successful at being employed by them for most of the year of 2009, seeing summer, autumn and winter as a parade and character performer, learning how to perform the Disney magic in the parade, and often the leader of the parade down Main Street. As well as being chosen to be part of the ice skate show during the winter, he then fast-tracked ice skating lessons, and Daniel took to his new challenge as if he'd regularly been on the ice rink. Yes, he had skated maybe a few times a year, but he had never done anything other than skate round an open rink forwards. He continued to audition for drama schools for a further 2 years, for Miss Lane at Lane Theatre Arts must have thought, if I don't let him come, then he'll just keep coming back every year, and she accepted him on the 3-year course. Danny only received initially 1 year of funding. He was thrilled, but worried because he had been saving money, researching trusts, charities and any other way to gather funding to follow his dream, but was a long way off the funding required to cover tuition and living expenses for the whole 3 years training. He got himself part-time work at Pizza Express in Epsom, working evenings and weekends to help support him financially throughout his training. After his first year of training and working his backside off, Miss Lane informed him at the Epsom Playhouse in rehearsals for his summer show that she would like to fund the rest of his training. He called home, sobbing and cheering. Emma Kate writes, "In my 3rd year of training with Danny, when we weren't drinking buddies, we were playing opposite each other in our college's production of Into the Woods. I was the baker's wife to his baker. Our director, Tudor Davis, decided he wanted regional accents for the characters. So I, with my very posh Winchester accent, spent a few evenings in the pub with Danny learning a Bolton accent, to which he said, 'You know, Saunders, you should keep this accent. It makes you sound way less stuck up.' He let out a big laugh and said, 'The next round's on me.'" Pizza Express continued to be a source of income when not working on stage. he transferred to the Bow Street Covent Garden branch when he moved from Epsom area to live more central in London. He always said when he finished any of his acting work, right, so it's back to Pizza Express the musical now. Speaking to his boss recently, we think he used to use the restaurant as a stage. He was out to perform to ensure every customer had an enjoyable evening, took interest in their reason for being in London, and could always comment about any show they were going to watch. And he always gave directions of how to get to the theatre or the site that they needed to get to. Just before graduating, Dani secured his first professional job in an actor-musician production of Fiddler on the Roof, directed and choreographed by Craig Revel Horwood in the role of Fedka. A role that meant he worked alongside one of his mum's childhood idols, Paul Michael Glaser, who also befriended Daniel and kept in touch, arranging to meet him every time he visited London, and has been in touch during his illness as well. He was not a trained musician, but had always enjoyed playing a guitar, mainly self-taught with some lessons whilst at school. He couldn't read music, but seemed to have a natural, untrained ability to pick things up easily. During this production, he rose to the challenge of playing more instruments under the guidance of Sarah Travis and other company members being his fast-track tutors, and surprised his family with his quick uptake of several other instruments becoming part of his skills. Lots of panto work, particularly whilst training and since graduating. One in particular stands out. Pinocchio in Pinocchio, working under the direction of Luke Shepherd, who allowed him to miss several initial rehearsals as he was on recall at final auditions for Bend It Like Beckham. Liz Singleton writes, Dani and I did the UK tour of Fiddler on the Roof together in 2013 and 14. On the first day, we clicked straight away as we discovered that we were both from Lancashire and that where we were originally from was just mere miles away from each other. Along with our Lancashire heritage and our similar age, fair hair and the fact we both had gaps in our teeth, we labelled each other Twinny from the very beginning. Dani had the joyful personality of a curious and excitable big kid. With Fiddler being an actor-musician production, the rehearsal room was filled with every instrument you could think of, and although Dani was already an incredibly skilled guitarist, he wanted to give every single instrument a go, practicing various instruments during pretty much every break we had. Once Dani set his mind on something, he wanted to give it a bash and enjoy himself in the process, no matter what it was. In 2016, whilst on tour, Dani found that finding accommodation for actors who tour was quite outdated and in need of a revamp. As a result of this, he created Tour Digs, an online and app-based site that would put everything online and bring finding digs into the 21st century. Do check out Tour Digs and see what Dani achieved. I have another story now from Kieran Kuipers. Kieran writes, this is a story about how he always put other people first. We were on a night out in Manchester on tour. As was always the way, when you were out with Dani, we stayed out too late and drank too much. I got a taxi back to my digs. When I got there, I realised I'd lost my keys. After a few minutes panicking, I called Dani, who was, of course, the first person I thought of to help. He promptly told me that I could stay at his if I needed to, and then he searched the club, which of course he was still in when the lights came up. He found my keys and got a taxi the opposite direction to my digs and dropped them off. Now this may seem insignificant, but it sticks in my mind as one of the million examples about how we could always be relied on as a friend, even at 4 a.m. after too many beers. He was always making sure everyone was in a cab safe and checking we all got home. I'm honoured to have had him as a friend. I would call him a close friend, but actually to him, all of his friends were close. He cared so deeply about us all. Every day, on his way out of the dressing room, he would always say, "See you on the green." So, Dani, see you on the green, my friend. In May 2015, Dani opened Bend It Like Beckham, the world premiere at the Phoenix Theatre, London, West End. It marks Daniel's West End debut. He was an ensemble member, covering both David Beckham and Joe, the leading man. In July 2017, Dani started Crazy For You as the swing and first cover Bobby Child and Bella Zangler in the actor-musician production. Emma Jane Morton writes, "I have so many memories of talking to Dani, ad-libbing in particular, on our very long bar scene. We talked mostly about food and dinner, either what we were going to eat or what we had eaten. We were such big food lovers. He was such an amazing cook. If I shared digs with him, he would always make some amazing curries. He rekindled my love of cottage cheese, and sometimes we were so engrossed in our conversations about food on stage that we even got notes from the director saying it looked like we were having our own conversation and we needed to look more engaged. Oops. He found it hilarious because, let's be honest, that is what we were doing. Arthur Bone writes, who was also in that cast, sometimes when you'd start telling everyone in the dressing room something generic about your life, Danny would interrupt by offering his phone and say it was for you, so you could call someone who gives a shit. He has two favourite quotes from Danny. The first was his catchphrase throughout the entire tour, which was just, "Oh, relax." 2 words that he said probably 1,000,000 times. It got pretty stressful at moments, and to just chill and go with the flow was definitely his motto. The second quote was something he had said, which Arthur believes was just a British thing, but was certainly Danny nevertheless. He had never heard it before, but Danny said to him, "That's about as useful as a one-legged man in an ass-kicking competition." Arthur loved that quote from Danny. He always made everyone in the cast feel very special. Arthur will miss him and says that he was a beautiful soul. On the 1st of June 2018, Danny went on as Bobby Child in the musical Crazy for You in Brighton. He was first cover for Tom Chambers and had only done half of the second act previous to this. Claire Sweeney writes, who was in that production, "Danny was one of the most chill performers I've ever known, and he always did a bloody brilliant job. He was loved by the cast of Crazy for You, and we'll all miss him." His most recent project was joining a band called Rough Sketch as their lead singer. Rock music was what Danny was brought up on by his father, and they were avid fans, always going to gigs together. Another dream of his was to be a rock star. He performed at numerous venues with Rough Sketch, both performing covers and his own original songs, which he wrote lyrics and a melody for, with help from his fellow bandmates. Shortly before his passing, he recorded an EP with his band, compiling of 6 original songs. They will be released in the not-so-distant future. On the 28th of September, Leslie, Danny's mum, wrote the following on Facebook. "Sadly, our beloved Daniel was unable to continue his battle, and at approximately 4 p.m. this afternoon, his spaceship took him to the biggest stage in the sky. We cannot thank people enough for all the love and the support that has been given over the past month. Obviously, we are broken at the moment. There are too many things to say, but not today. Love you to bits, Dan. You crammed as much achievement into your far too short 28 years, making us all immensely proud. Keep on giving it a bash up there." Just to repeat what I said at the beginning of this episode, I never met Daniel Bolton. But I've spent the past 2 days reading extraordinary testimonies, incredible anecdotes, and endless outpourings of love about how much this performer clearly meant to so many of you. I'm sorry that I've only been able to cram his very, very short life into under 30 minutes. But how on earth can I sum up a whole man in one episode, let alone when he's not here? To Danny and his family, and everybody who knew him, please accept my deepest sympathies, and I hope this little podcast has done something to honour his legacy and your extraordinary memories. One request. Tom Scanlon, when Danny was in hospital, set up a GoFundMe campaign to help with his recovery. Please visit www.gofundme.com/raising-funds-for-Danny-Bolton. Let's do that amazing thing we do in this industry when we have terrible news like this. Let's band together and let's help this family. You've been listening to Andrew Keats on the Show People podcast in memory of Daniel Bolton from Bolton.